You've done the right thing. You've insulated your ceiling. You've insulated your underfloor. But you're still cold. Best you finish the job. And to match your walls.
As I mentioned earlier, last week, in an announcement made by the Minister of Health, the Minister said that because basically the public system is such a mess, that they would be working in partnership with the private sector to deliver particularly more surgical procedures. Now, this has not gone down well with the public health sector, who argue that as a result of that particular announcement, it's likely that there'll be more waiting times in the public system because the private system usually uses the same staff, particularly the same clinical staff. I don't know about nurses, but certainly the people who do the operations, the surgeons in particular, and that they'll therefore have less time to spend in the public system, specialist surgeons, anaesthetists, medical imaging technicians, etc., than they would if the current system was to be enhanced. And they're arguing, oh no, that's the wrong place to place money. Why don't you put money into the public health system where we can then do these operations instead of outsourcing them? It's a classic ideological competition or conflict, which, God, for as long as I've been in public life, which would be almost 40 years, has never ceased to happen. But joining us to talk about that latest announcement and whether or not the public health system activists, if you like, and proponents have a case, is Blair Roxborough from the Private Hospitals Association, and he joins us now. Blair, welcome to the show. Sorry, there you are. Lovely to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, good to be with you, Michael.
Just tell me a little bit about yourself, first of all. You are, what, the New Zealand Private Surgical Hospitals Association, is that right?
Yes, I wear two hats, I suppose. I'm Chief Executive of St George's Hospital down in Christchurch here.
Yep.
And we're a registered charity and providing, clinical secondary surgical care for the people of Christchurch and Canterbury. As a member hospital of the New Zealand Private Surgical Hospital Association, of which there's 35 members covering 47 facilities up and down the country, I also am at the moment the president of that association. So I kind of wear two hats, one being the chief executive of a private hospital, the other being the current president of the hospital association, the Surgical Hospital Association.
Right. Now, you do a lot of, or your members perform an extensive range of elective surgery, I'm told, from cancer, complex neurosurgery, cardiothoracic surgery, and then you do the bog standard orthopedic, ENT, gynecological, and minor procedures as well. That's you. The extraordinary. I was just making the point before 11 o'clock that you do 90% of the ACC's elective services, including me twice, for a hernia and for a knee operation after I managed to screw it up running, in actual fact. But now the suggestion is that the public system, you'll be funded to do surgery that would normally be done in the public health system, not by ACC or funded by ACC. Can you tell us a little bit about that arrangement?
Yes, certainly, Michael. I think it's important to start off by saying this is not new. I know you've been involved previously in one of your careers in the DHB. And the concept of outsourcing or having the private system pick up some of this capacity is not new. It's been around arguably for decades. So what we're talking about here is probably working in a more strategic sense, a more whole sector partnering sense between, but from a capacity point of view, from a shared workforce point of view, to unblock that whole wait list that the country is experiencing, and as the public have been told through the various media around long wait lists, etc. So we being the Private Surgical Hospital Association, have been advocating that we need a whole of sector partnering approach with the public in terms of Health New Zealand, which covers both the ability for us to help in planned care and also in partnership with that also work together to build and develop the workforce as well. So it's about continuing in a partnership, attending to long wait lists, helping in the planned care environment, so that enables public to look at the acute ED, which they do a marvellous job at. And at the same time, we continue to do what we do in terms of training and developing the workforce.
Yeah, the really interesting thing is that Health New Zealand opposed this. We know that through the Official Information Act and various advice that was released after the announcement. Is it common for you to strike resistance from Health New Zealand head office and bureaucrats to performing these services in the private sector?
To be fair, no. We're working with a number of different people within Health New Zealand. Again, it's important to point out this is not new. This is not a 2025 initiative. It's been going on for many years. What is new is perhaps the thinking of that a more of a longer term arrangement. Generally, they've been year by year. And what the conversation is now turning its attention to is maybe a multi-year or 3-year arrangement, which would only allow better planning and therefore potentially more procedures to be done for those patients across New Zealand who are waiting for their planned care.
Okay, well, so most surgeons, as I understand, operate in both the public and the private system. I'm sure how many of your staff, for example, at St George's, I'm sorry, I don't know, Leah, how big your operation is, but how many of your surgeons would work exclusively in the private sector?
Michael, in terms of percentages, it would be under 5%.
Yeah.
The vast majority of surgeons and anaesthetists, as you foreshadowed in your opening there, work across both the public and private system. There's only a very, very small number of specialists that are private only. So they're balancing their public appointment with their private work.
Okay, so that's the reason I asked that question, because the full memo from New Zealand Health New Zealand, the one that's been released in the Official Information Act, says that they are worried about the loss of specialist surgeons, anaesthetists and medical imaging technicians from public health to the private hospital as a result of this announcement. They said that technicians had already been lost as the private sector dramatically enhanced salaries to attract staff. Do you think that there's any legitimacy to that concern?
Well, if I term firstly about the clinicians and anaesthetists, it's not an employment relationship. It's they're individual contractors. So private hospitals don't employ surgeons. So the surgeons will make their own mind up whether to venture out into a private practice, and they will engage with and have a fee-for-service relationship with the facility rather than an employment relationship. So these are very capable, highly busy people. They balance the workloads between the public and private. And to date, we haven't had any instance where they're in conflict between managing those two work streams, which they have.
All right. And if that's the case, you're suggesting you can do both, then will I expect, obviously Simeon Brown believes that you are more efficient and effective in the private sector than the public. Well, why would that be? I mean, the public sector was also set up to do elective procedures as well. The waiting list is huge. Why can't they deal with the waiting list? Why does it require the private sector to come in and do it? Is it because they're inherently inefficient? They don't pay surgeons enough? What's the problem?
Well, I think some of those questions are best answered by Health New Zealand. But a big point of difference, Michael, is the private surgical hospital association is about planned care and the emphasis on planned. So it's not acute, it's not emergency. So therefore, planned care allows greater timing, greater planning. We know when the patients are coming in for their procedure, what day of the week, what position on the list, and we know that weeks in advance. In a public setting, obviously they're dealing with a wide variety of presentations, be it in the ED, be it in acute, be it in other medical aspects of public health. What we're talking about here is planned surgical procedures.
Yeah, gotcha. So what you're saying is that if I plan to have an elective surgery under a orthopaedic surgeon in, I don't know, Christchurch Public Hospital, and suddenly there's a huge road smash and that orthopaedic surgeon's required to go immediately and assisted ED, then the elective surgery gets cancelled because of that particular acute emergency. Is that what you're saying?
You've done the right thing. You've insulated your ceiling. You've insulated your underfloor. But you're still cold. Best you finish the job and to match your walls.